Meetings. Mark Garang here, publisher of The Sun, and today George Epstein is joining us, our Sun columnist and a regular participant with me here. How you doing, George?
I'm good. All is working out.
All right, it's December 5th, so we're kind of getting into the winter season already. It's kind of nice out. We got snow.
Nice fluffy snow. It really was a nice dump of snow.
For us tennis players, though, we did have to put the courts away.
We did, yes.
It is hard to believe, though, because I was saying before we went on, I played tennis last night in Bethel, but it was like 6 weeks ago. You know, December, October, first week of November was like 75 degrees. We were playing down at Davis Court.
Absolutely fine to play. Absolutely, yeah. It lasted longer and longer each year. It seems a little bit, and we get on the court a little bit earlier, and we were able to stay a little longer.
But the transition in like 7 weeks.
It was
drastic.
You know,
it's like 70 degrees to
snowshoeing.
Although although it was funny, one of the forecasts this morning said it's on the phone says 3 degrees, but it feels like 9. Like, okay, is that much of a
no? There was a mistake somewhere.
Well, you get in the sun.
No, they don't do it that way though. That should never occur.
Okay, I got to get a new phone then.
Yeah.
All right, so. This is another we'll talk a couple of things. One of the local issues, then at the end we'll do the predictions since this is the end of the year.
Okay.
So I call these existential challenges. One is about housing and one is about the school situation. So as we all know, or most people know, you know, the contracts with the sending schools with Conway, they're expiring in 2027, which means all the towns have to get their act together to put it on the ballot this spring at town meetings. And Jackson has worked out a deal with Conway where on the ballot they're going to have a choice between sending the kids to Freiburg Academy or Kennett, which to me is the camel's nose underneath the tent of what's happening to what other sending towns are doing, and they're still in negotiations, and we don't know unless you've heard what's going on. But what's your thought about, I mean, if sending, I mean, to me the school choice, right? If I'm a town and I want to send some kids to Freiburg or Moltenborough Academy or something, that's not a bad thing, but it could collapse Kennett. I mean, you lose hundreds of students.
So I'm not in the mainstream on this, but I'll be very clear about my thoughts. Half of Kennett High School is made up of students from Conway and half from the sending districts. Half of Kennett High School was paid for, the construction of it, by Conway and half by the sending districts. Half of the ongoing operating expenses are paid by Conway and half by the sending districts. The sending districts have no vote. The sending districts are taxed without representation. Conway has this gamble each time of how many students and how many towns they'll be able to retain and have to deal with potential very significant fluctuations in their enrollment to the point where the enrollment could drop and really significantly impact both the quality of education and also the cost of education, because a very low enrollment high school can be much more expensive per student. There's only one obvious direction for this to go. The Mount Washington Valley and Kennett High School needs to be a cooperative school district. There's no question in my mind that that's a win for everybody.
And how is that different?
Okay, so the towns that make up a cooperative have no borders. All of the voters in those towns make up a single governmental unit, and they vote as a group for school board members. And those school board members run that school district, that cooperative school district. The taxing system and the taxing model is negotiable, and there are different ways to structure that. So let me make a couple of points first. Number one, the Conway benefits so clearly by locking in student enrollments that they need and the funding from the sending districts that it needs. Look at all the complaints from Conway about losing a handful of kids from Jackson because the money is significant.
Right, and just if I interrupt here for 1 second, is that, and the way it's structured now is that these students, I mean, these sending towns aren't just sending their students on a census basis. It's a combination of how many students you send and how much property you have. So towns like Jackson and Bartlett have not many kids, but a lot of property. They pay a lot.
And that's what all this negotiation is that's probably going on right now that we don't see in public. but that's very flexible. There's no state law that says this is exactly how the taxing structure has to work in that situation. Conway needs to and wants to lock in those people, and Conway wants to retain control, but as a voting bloc, Conway would continue to be by far the dominant voting bloc and have the opportunity, if they want to continue to elect most or all of the school board members of the cooperative from Conway. That would be perfectly easy for them to do because of the way the numbers work. It's an enormous advantage for the sending towns. They get to have a say in the management of the high school they're sending their kids to, the budgeting for that high school, the curriculum for that high school, all the rest of it, because they are at least able to vote for the school board members.
But that was the old thing about, now, I know I'm interrupting here and I apologize, but were we always under this contract situation, or do we have, because remember the talk about weighted votes?
No, right? They're two different things. So the weighted votes relate to the SAU, only votes associated with the school administrative unit, the superintendent's office, and the superintendent's office budget. It's not meaningless, but nothing like being a school board that runs a school. Okay. So the SAU board doesn't run a school, it only runs the superintendent's office. Okay. So I'm talking about a school board that would be for Kennett High School. That would be the school board, and it would be a cooperative school board. All of the voters would be equal voters. Everybody benefits, and the most important benefit is that everybody walks into that school with exactly the same role. You don't have the sending town kids who have a lesser stake. You don't have the sending town taxpayers who have a low control. You don't have the Conway people who say, gee, this is my school and we're going to do it my way kind of thing. You have everybody with common ownership, and that makes for better schools. Every research piece says that the degree of local control, local involvement, local commitment, local ownership of a school enhances the environment and the culture of that school. Everybody wins. Now, in practical terms, there have been many votes over 50 years for cooperative school districts, and if I remember correctly, at one time or another, every town has voted to be part of a cooperative school district, including Conway, but for a cooperative school district vote to pass, all of the participating towns all have to vote successfully. You can't have 4 vote in favor and 1 against. That puts an end to that particular cooperative. So my proposal would be for, an easy one, would be for Conway, Madison, and Bartlett to initially form the cooperative. Madison, Bartlett, and Conway all have roughly similar tax rates, available tax property for the number of students they have. It's all relatively comparable, so there's no big tax variation. Conway would remain very much the dominant player because you'd only have Bartlett and Madison in terms of additional population. So Conway would feel that sense of control, but you'd finally have Madison and Bartlett able to vote.
And they're the two, they must be the two towns that send the most kids to the school, right?
And Tamworth. And the reason I don't include Tamworth the first time is I think Tamworth has to work through their experiment with Moultonborough to see how attractive sending some or most or all of their kids to Moultonborough, which is an extremely different environment. It's a tiny school, and it's just going to be a very different experience for their students. And they might have to work that through, and rather than have Tamworth vote it down and the other 3 want to come together and have no cooperative, I think the first 3 should be Madison, Bartlett, and Conway. And then you invite Tamworth to come on board. They would have a similar tax rate, and if they wanted to join and chose to join, they could, but there'd be an existing cooperative for them to join. Albany and Eaton would be the next 2 logical ones to join. They're small and they're not going to make a big difference either way, and they can decide, but you wouldn't want them to be the ones to kill it. Exactly. I don't know that Jackson and Freedom would ever logically join because their tax situation is so radically different, and they'd have to be, to get them to vote for it, they'd have to be offered sort of a sweetheart deal that says, gee, you don't have to pay at the same tax rate as the rest of us because you don't now, and that would be painful for them. And I think it might be difficult for them to come on board, and Chatham doesn't matter. They should continue to send their kids to Freiburg. So to me, it's a no-brainer. There is no loss. There is no downside whatsoever. Everyone wins. There's stability long-term, not 15 years, not 20 years, but real long-term stability, and a capacity to plan, and a sense of ownership across all of the people who are sending their kids to Kennett High School, which is an enhancement to the environment at the high school. So there you go. There's a lecture.
That is a lecture. That's a good one. That's not a bad one. I'm
Okay. I'm going to write a column.
No, okay, that's a good one. But now, gosh, if I'd known you were going to say that, I would have researched it because I don't remember. But didn't we vote on a cooperative?
Oh, multiple times.
Right, and it's always been, I think Jackson or Bartlett was the ones who...
Albany one time killed it, which was crazy. I'd have to go back to go through which ones killed it each individual time. Conway has been hesitant, but at one point voted in favor of it. Again, years back. I mean, we're talking
before
decades.
This contract, but I do remember in the last 20 years we voted for it for sure.
I think it was more, just over 20 years.
Okay. All right, so that's a great idea. That's a great idea. And but that doesn't address the quality of education.
It doesn't.
So I mean, I know you're not going to be able to. Nobody can. I mean, you have your ideas, but I mean, when people complain about, this is my pat answer. When people complain about Trump to me, I said, don't complain about it. Look at your own Democrats. You caused the problem.
Right.
So it's kind of this, when people want to defend the school and all that, I say, okay, well, let's look at the school. There's a reason why the Jackson people are sending the kids to Freiburg. There's a reason why a lot of let's call them motivated parents are sending their kids to the charter school in Freiburg. I mean, we're losing some of our best students. The charter doesn't fix that.
I do believe that a cooperative school district creates a different situation. You have a broader pool of potential school board members, and you have a different mindset to it. Instead of being on the outside as sending districts, and saying, okay, I want school choice, I want to be able to send my kids here and there. That sense of ownership says, boy, I want to be able to improve the quality of my schools, feel that sense of ownership, and devote more energy and time and thought to enhancing what goes on in the school. You've point out exactly what is occurring, that there is an ongoing loss of enrollment at I'm going to stick to Kennett High School primarily. You can do the middle school and stuff, but Kennett High School. And that ongoing loss of enrollment is something, in the end, somebody in Conway has to, right now, somebody in Conway has to say, I care about that I am going to compete. I'm going to do what I have to do in order to be able to send a message that for most kids, maybe almost all kids, Kennett is a better choice than this charter school, than this private school, or Freiburg Academy, or Moulton Borough. I want to compete, and what am I going to do to be able to compete? And I don't think it's that hard, but I think you have to bring that mindset to it. You have to say, I want faculty members who are committed to that level of quality, and I am going to figure out how to hire and retain those faculty members, not to lose them after they get 3 or 4 years of experience and go off to make 30% more money. I'm going to find ways in order to solve that problem. And maybe I'm wrong. I'm on the outside. I'm not in Conway, but I'm a close observer. I don't see a sense of responsibility that way. I don't see a Conway school board and a Conway school administration saying, I recognize we've got a problem here, and these are the things I'm going to do about that. That's the first step, right?
I guess so. I mean, this is totally armchair quarterbacking for me, because I definitely don't know about the curriculum. But to me, I've always thought we should be good at something. I mean, Canada has a career tech, and I believe in that. I think it's a great opportunity for a lot of kids. And, and Freiburg is known for their arts. That's why a lot of people go. So why can't we just focus on being good? Let's say, okay, school board, let's decide to be really good at something. We got the career tech, which is great. Why don't we be good on humanities and liberal arts?
So for a long stretch, and I'm too far out of date to be able to comment, but you're absolutely right. Freiburg was known for its arts, for its music, for its drama program, for its literature. And when I used to do the Scholar Bowl, and you had the Kennett kids competing with the Freiburg kids, boy, it was very dramatic. The Freiburg kids had a stronger, very much in general, it's a stereotype, but as a general rule, were better prepared and were more effective answering questions in that area. And the Kennett kids clearly were stronger in math and science. There was no question, and for many years they were stronger. The guy who replaced me as a math teacher long ago at Kennett High School was a Freiburg teacher who came over and said, holy mackerel, this is hard. The stuff you're teaching at Kennett High School, we don't teach at Freiburg Academy. The degree that you go, the distance you go into calculus, for example, we didn't touch that stuff. That's out of date. But you did for a long time have a clear distinction between Kennett in terms of the quality of the science and math education and the depth of, I won't say the quality, but the depth of that same education in Freiburg. It was weaker. It was substantially weaker for the best students. And the same was true as an advantage for Freiburg. So as you said, there was an area of specialty and of strength. Maybe it's still there. But we don't see that. We don't see test results that would convince us of that. We don't have apples to apples comparisons in test results between Freiburg and Kennett. Probably could get them. I'm not sure, but I think the AP tests that are provided, the national tests, that math students and English students and history students and all that, those advanced placement test scores would be, I think, available for schools and available to look at for schools. But if I was at Kennett High School and I was losing to my competition in these areas, this would be something that I'd be exploring, I'd be looking into, and if I couldn't demonstrate real strength in certain areas, I would try to, as you said, develop that expertise and that strength in that area.
I mean, one thought that occurred to me, and Mike D on this Conway School Board, he's politically, he's conservative. He's a conservative guy, except
who are you?
Mike DiGregorio.
Yeah.
And you know, and more power to him. He is, and so conservatives generally want to watch the budget and all that. But on a school board, he's all about spending money. Including things like the all these safety accoutrements of moving the front of the building to the back and all that kind of stuff. And it just occurred to me is that I think the school board the only one that's really kind of like out of the box thinking is like Randy Davidson, And I think the school board needs some of that. It seems like the school board has, I'm going to call them institutionalists. I mean, it's about preserving what you have. It's the union, and I know you were a union guy. You actually said last time that you were the one who got us in
the first union, contract.
The first union contract, but it just seems as though, how come you and I can say these things and it doesn't percolate to the school board or with candidates?
Well, part of it is I disagree with you pretty much completely.
Really? Usually I don't let people on the show who disagree with me.
And you shouldn't. You should stamp this out. Rob would let me come speak. The way you categorize two individuals that you mentioned on the Conway School Board, I would flip exactly in the opposite direction. I think you have. I don't want to do the individuals.
Okay. I did, so you can talk about them.
I don't want to do that. So I'm going to go back to the cooperative school district. I think we do need a broader range of candidates for the school board that runs Kennett High School. And that is another big gain that we get by bringing in potential board members from the surrounding towns as well. And I think expanding the pool of people we can be voting for is a good idea. But the mindset isn't about we should spend more money, we should spend less money, because I would certainly spend money differently from the way the Conway School Board is spending it. Whether it's spending too much or too little, who knows? because we don't have a set of specific academic goals and achievements that we're striving for. What is it that's holding us back from achieving those things? You don't set a budget in your business here at the Conway Daily Sun on the basis of how much I want to spend this year. You spend it on the basis of what I'm trying to achieve, and then you work within the restrictions of the money that's pouring in the door. And so what is it you're trying to achieve? That comes first. And I don't believe that we have that. I don't believe we have a Conway school board that is taking the competition that they should be pursuing with the schools that are eating our lunch. And seriously, they're not attacking what the strengths and weaknesses are that they need to in order to win the competition and to demonstrate that the Conway schools are where you should send your kids. And if you don't want to do that, what's the message you're sending? Do you not care? Do you have a lot of excuses about the fact that these schools cherry pick the students and you're left with the weaker students? I mean, there are all sorts of statistical things that you can look at, but get some data, gather up some data, and then set some goals based on the data that you've accumulated, and then build a budget based on achieving those goals.
Very good. And I'm gonna, if Mike is watching this, because I am a fan of Mike and I endorse him, so I wasn't, but I do disagree with him with the money being spent on all these security measures. And I just want,
What would you do if you were at Stoneham Douglas High School and you were a school board member there and you didn't buy the camera or change the entrance before the 20 kids get murdered? I mean,
how far do you go?
Saying, and there's no limit as to how far you can go. You're absolutely right, and in the end, you have to make judgments that way, one way or the other. But boy, I think that's a tough place for a school board member to be in.
It is, but the reason why I was thinking about it with all this talk about Jackson sending the kids to Freiburg is that you don't hear Freiburg Academy. I don't think they have security to that extent, or the charter school down here in the Tech Village. I mean,
I don't know the answer to those things. Kennet High School as a campus, and the middle school in particular as a campus, probably tougher places to police and to manage and to oversee. So I don't know the answer.
Okay, we won't go there because anybody who's not for security, tough. It's tough. But I think you have to be careful on the budgetary. I think that was one of the issues with the Conway School Board last spring, is that they proposed this idea of switching the front to the back, and people, to me, it
felt like too much.
It's over the top.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I think your cooperative's a good idea. Madison, Conway, and Bartlett, and we'll call it the Epstein formula. And I assume you'll be applying for the school board position.
No, I think I should be the moderator of the first district meeting.
There we go.
Okay.
Fair enough. Okay. The other one is housing, and we're not going to spend 23 minutes on housing.
No.
But there are all these, this is this classic everywhere in the world, NIMBYism. So we've been clamoring for for affordable housing for years and years, the shortage, all the reasons we know. Yet when the developments come up, NIMBY, we get the one at the Red Jacket, there's a new one up at Ledgewood by Chalmers, the old A.D. Davis building, and now one on Paul Street in Conway Village. I mean, you can't have it all ways.
So a couple of things. First, my baseline message is STRs, STRs, STRs.
Yeah.
So as soon as you pass a law that says STRs cannot operate in residential zones, then you've solved the problem overnight for this area, and that would take care of it. But as far as the construction projects and all the rest of it, I go back to who should make the decisions. There's always going to be, with any development, I had a neighbor who had a long-term refurbishing of their house. It was noisy. It was just, do I wish they didn't do it? I wish they didn't do it. But people have to do stuff, and that's going to occur. But I want the decisions made about the granting of permits, about what's reasonable, and all the rest of it to be done locally. And the fact that our supposedly conservative state government, our supposedly conservative legislature and governor have all promoted, supported, voted for, and passed laws that take authority away from our planning boards, our zoning boards of adjustment, and from the voters for establishing reasonable zoning laws, disgusts me. It makes me absolutely irate.
Even though you may agree with some of the policy specifically.
Sure, sure, because that's what happens. You have conservative people get elected to the legislature and they think, well, I don't think that the state should make decisions about a local town unless I'm the state and I know best. And so I believe this is right and this is right. And so I'm going to pass it and impose it on the whole rest of the state. And that's the mindset we have in Concord, is to keep taking authority away from our local communities, our local town meetings, our local boards, our select.
Well, that's always one of your themes about local control, and it's definitely aspirational.
Jumps out in this particular situation. One other point with regard to this, and that's in 1990, roughly in that area, there was a housing shortage in this area. And people complained about it, and there were headlines and all the rest of it, and housing costs jumped up, and it became very difficult. And the Conway area formed the Mount Washington, I think it was Mount Washington Valley Housing Cooperative. It might have been the Conway Housing Cooperative. And Randy Cooper, a wonderful attorney there, took responsibility. He was the chair of the board, and we did stuff in order to start housing projects to go. And guess what happened? The housing market collapsed.
Crashed.
And really crashed. And suddenly everything was cheap, and poor Randy was stuck with winding this thing down, and there was money involved, and it was tricky, and he was heroic in fixing the situation. Whatever is going to occur, the pendulum will swing too far in one direction, and we will have an overabundance of housing, unless it all goes into STRs, which is another possibility. We'll have an overabundance if all this stuff gets built that's proposed and planned for, and so on. And the town of Conway in particular is eating the impact of all of these housing projects and all the number of housing units that are going to be created. Look at the old Echo building, 20-something, mostly, I think, single-bedroom apartments that they're going to put over 20 apartments into a place surrounded by asphalt. Not exactly the environment necessarily that you move here for. What do we want the community to be? What does Conway want it to be? All I know for sure is that Concord shouldn't be deciding what Conway should be and what the Conway plan should be. Let it go through the process. Let the neighbors provide their feedback. If people are applying for waivers from the zoning laws in order to build things, then the boards have some right to deny those waivers, and they should be listening to the neighbors, what's the impact on their neighborhood, and they should make a judgment as to whether the neighbors are being reasonable about it or not being reasonable.
Right, and I don't disagree with that. And some of the things you're talking about with the state control, I would just say that's a tail wagging the dog, because some of those things are like, oh, you can have an accessory unit, a detached accessory unit instead of having it attached to your house, which most people would agree that's fine, put it in the backyard, and you're just talking about the concept of having the state control, which I don't disagree with.
But the state also was talking about greater density.
Yes, with the sewer, they got some things going on.
Right, and number of acres, and yeah.
But locally, I don't think these projects are really asking for a lot of waivers substantially. And this is what concerns me. And Ryan O'Connor, we have a great planner in our planning board, you know, Ben Colbath and Eliza Chair and Eliza Grant and a bunch of them. They're really progressive, and I think they're doing the right thing. We got the master plan, but what's happening now is like at a lot of these places, hey, a developer like up here in North Conway, with the Ledgewood, is a developer buys a piece of property. It totally conforms with the number of units you can put on it, puts a ton of money in it. And I got Josh McAllister at HEB making a professional presentation, and Steve Porter says it's too big. It's just too big. So I see, now maybe they're going to squeeze them so it'll be fewer units, which affects the developer and all that. I see some lawsuits coming down. You can't just stop people when it's allowed.
You can't, if it's truly allowed. But where I will, I think, disagree at least somewhat with you is I think most of these involve some requests for waivers. So the only one I know about is the Pollard Street one, and there are requests for waivers from aspects. And so the boards have the right and would win lawsuits if they said, gee, we're denying it and here's the basis for it. And as long as you have a basis, you have to be willing to stand up to the lawyers of the developers. So you're right, but let's go through the decision-making process in an appropriate way. can the planning board lean on somebody who's got the right to build it, to do it a little bit more nicely, to plant more trees, to have the parking lot be better designed? I mean, that's what they've done with the Walmarts of the world and all the rest of it, and it's probably helped a little bit. Sure, they can do that. But in the end, I don't see a lot of situations where the Conway Planning Board or ZBA are acting in a way that would result in lawsuits and so on, because I don't think they say no unless they have a solid basis for saying no.
And I actually agree with that. I mean, I fear the lawsuits because we've had so many.
We have.
But I think the bigger question, this is the existential question, because and I call them challenges because it really is true. The school is one, and this housing thing, there are 500 or 600 units coming online if these things get through.
Right.
And you would say that, well, we could, of course, we never know. We can have a crash. Nobody knew that crash in the 90s. Nobody knew the 2010, 8, 9, and 10 crash. But boy, tourist areas, as you know, they've been having housing shortages forever. I mean, most places who are like us, they just never grow out of it.
Yes and no. You're absolutely right about the Vales and the Jackson Holes and all the rest of it. But we and Conway has done a messy enough job of development and to discourage the kind of pressure from outsiders wanting to move into this area. I think the game changer is work from home. To what degree will work from home be the impact of here, and will that for a long time prop up the housing market and keep the housing market from crashing, even when there's a reduction in sort of the desire for living here? The work from home is just too good a deal, and this is too nice a place to work from home. So that can provide a support. So I don't know the answer, and like you said, no one can predict when that crash will occur. But I don't see any solution to it except my ban STRs in residential areas.
Yeah, and even that as a solution frees up housing, but it doesn't address the overall, and this happens in every community. Do we want to grow? I mean, fundamentally, and this is what makes the community so interesting. We got the chamber, bring people in.
Right.
We get some locals, no, keep people out.
Right.
And then it's changing. I mean, this is going to be a different community in 3 or 4 or 5 years. I mean, we got to, don't forget the 200 units in back at TJ Maxx.
Right.
And they're being built right now in Ridgeline. And that's retirement homes and
Avesta
by the Tech Village.
Yeah.
There's a lot going on. and you can make a case that we need it all. I mean, the Ridgeline is going to have, assisted care and a medical facility.
Yeah.
People don't have to go out of town when they get older like us.
Absolutely right. Is it the kind of development we want? Who is going to be able to afford to live there? I remember when the Dupree project heading towards Saco Woods was going to be elder housing for the most part, and instead it's not. I don't think to a large degree. So the purposes vary over time, and the kinds of residents that you get vary over time. And then, the magic bullet in New Hampshire is what's the ratio of students per housing unit? Because that's where our tax rate comes from. And so if you're talking about elder housing, hey, they're a free lunch. They're relatively cheap. But if you start filling up Saco Woods with a bunch of parents with little kids all going to school, then you have a huge impact on the tax rate and the tax burden in the community. So planning, and it's not easy to do that. And to a large degree, live free or die. And I think you expressed it a little bit. I own this property. There's no absolute law that says I can't do it. I ought to be able to do it, right?
I think if the laws are there, it's hard. I agree, and I'm not saying if I lived in Pollitt Street, I'd be on the same way. I don't want people going up my street. So believe me, I'm not criticizing anybody who's NIMBYism, and that's just the way life works.
We've still done 20 minutes, even though we weren't going to do that.
Okay. But you know what who was it that said that, planning works until you get hit in the face? You get punched in the face?
Mike Tyson. Plan until you get punched in the face.
That's exactly right.
I think Napoleon actually said it first.
Really?
You have a plan until the first shot is fired.
Oh, okay. Well, Mike Tyson is a literary
Yeah, he was right on top of his history.
Yeah, he really was.
That's right.
All righty. So your column, so enough of that, okay?
Okay.
Okay, we're done with housing. We solved that problem. But it really is going to, I mean, it just starts a cycle.
That's
Once we
gonna
get some
linger.
nice homes here, I mean, not any homes, just rentals, and all of a sudden people can start working at the hospital. Teachers can have apartments to live in, even though the ones in your old building. But in a world of having a first apartment, I don't think it's so bad being in the middle of Conway Village.
No, they'll rent that. There's a need for it.
You can
Absolutely
walk downtown,
right.
you go to the library, you can go down to the,
Yeah.
restaurants, I don't know, theater.
Yeah,
I think you might move back.
I could move back.
You could move back.
Absolutely. A pied-à-terre. Conway. Sorry, that's for the more sophisticated audience that we have.
This is a very sophisticated audience. Do not talk down to our audience, please.
Not.
Let's see, what else is going on? And so there are 20 units in there, huh?
I think more than 20.
And they were all,
what
that
they were
was your,
planning for.
just offices at one point, right?
Yeah. Yep, it was all offices. There's a piece still set aside potentially for an office space. I don't know the final design associated with it, but they're doing a good job, the mechanics and the construction and all that, and they took their time and got all their approvals, and everything's in place. So we'll see. I absolutely think there's a need, and single people and one-bedroom apartments at what I assume would be a fairly reasonable price. Yeah. Boy, they'll get filled up. But I also feel like it's kind of a shame to not have more green space there, and if I'm living somewhere. At the same time, it was great for us at Echo. People would go, I don't know if this is appropriate, cross-country ski through the cemetery and behind the old Kennett High School, and you'd go down to Davis Park, shoot some hoops, swim in a river.
Still can do that.
Absolutely. Yeah. So it is kind of a neat, not quite urban kind of lifestyle.
No, it is. Now that we mention it, I mean, right, Davis Park is right there.
Absolutely.
You got the river and all that, so you got a little pavement.
I think it'll be very successful, but it's strange.
Well, for you it's strange because it's your old office building.
Yeah, that's probably part of it.
I mean, if this building ever turned into a brothel or something, I mean, I'd be a little...
Okay, we should move on, and that could even be edited.
Okay. All righty. Your last column was called Vigilante Justice. Yeah. So do you want to head into the little national politics here? I mean, he brought up, I mean, it's right on the news now, this Venezuelan shooting the boats. And, I mean, to set this up a little bit, here we are. Apparently, we may invade Venezuela, which I don't understand fundamentally. And then, of course, the hypocrisy is that they just pardoned the Honduran president who was found guilty of importing like 400 tons of cocaine. So explain all that, George.
Well, first of all, I once again am way ahead of the curve by running that column and writing that column before what had already occurred, which became public, which was the double shot on the boat and killing the survivors of the initial attack. And there is a claim by the administration that there's a legal justification for shooting at any of those boats and blowing up any of those boats and killing those 80+ people. But they refuse so far to release the legal justification. Well, I'm talking about the legal justification.
Yeah,
they won't even release the memo that says this is why this is legal. A lot of people, good lawyers, constitutional lawyers, can't figure out what possibly could be the justification associated with it, number one. Number two, the claims are just nonsense, that every boat would kill 25,000 people with the drugs aboard. Since 100,000 people a year die in America, very roughly, from drugs, 4 boats would save all of their lives, and so far we've shot 20-something, blown them up, and I don't think we've reduced the death rate at all at this point. Second lie is that this is to stop fentanyl from coming into the country. Fentanyl doesn't come from Venezuela. Fentanyl comes across the border at legal border crossings, for the vast majority of it from Mexico, with materials that came from China into Mexico, where it was manufactured and crossed at legal border points. This has nothing to do with fentanyl, and fentanyl is far and away the largest killer of people. The third is that it's about drugs at all, and of course it's not about drugs. The President has, as you said, pardoned the Honduras president, who was a massive drug dealer. And the single largest drug dealer in America was the creator of the Silk Road dark website. And he and his buddies gave the Trump campaign enough money so that he bought his 30-year or something sentence completely commuted. I think, in fact, he was pardoned. The president doesn't care about drugs. So what is it really that this is all about? And it probably has some overhang from immigration. The big winning issue for the current president is stopping the uncontrolled immigration, and so much of it came from Venezuela and the people that Maduro drove out of Venezuela. The guy's a murderous dictator. He's a crook. He's evil in all respects. And he was able to largely destroy the economy of a country that really had a very solid economy, tons of oil, as well as an educated population. It was a good, solid country. So maybe it was a little bit that. And then how much of it is wag the dog? Which was the other point. Bill Clinton.
Wag the dog is?
Well, so going back to Bill Clinton, when he was in the midst of Monica Lewinsky scandal stuff and getting ready to go on trial for his impeachment, he fired cruise missiles at the training site in Afghanistan, where Osama bin Laden was thought to be. Now, nobody knew, this was before 9/11, so nobody knew who Osama bin Laden was. Nobody knew much of anything about Al-Qaeda. But he fired them off, and all the Republican senators said, this is terrible. He's just doing this to distract us from Monica Lewinsky and the blue dress and all the rest of it. And so a guy wrote actually pseudonymously, I think I'm pronouncing that right, but it was a reporter for Newsweek.
What's that word again?
Pseudonymously. He used a pseudonym for his, the author did not use his name when he originally wrote it. And he wrote a novel about a made-up president in the midst of a sex scandal who goes to war in order to distract from the scandal that he was engaged in. And so to the degree that this is a wag the dog, that the Epstein files, no relation, the Epstein files need a distraction for Trump. He needs to be able to push that onto the back burner, and the degree to which going to war with Argentina, Venezuela, and creating as big a distraction and arguments and fights associated with that, for and against, to reduce the amount of attention paid to the Epstein files.
I mean, Trump can create a distraction every day, and he does. But boy, I mean, why? I mean, I just fundamentally don't. Venezuela, like you said, I mean, it's not a great country now, but it's a big country. It's a big country, big population. They got a big military. Like, what's the? I mean, obviously we could take them out in a heartbeat, but you know, we have like 25% of our Navy down there now. I mean, we got an aircraft carrier. It must look.
I'm not sure it's 25, but we have ridiculous amount of force, and as you said, it would be overnight to largely wipe out any military resistance that
but
Venezuela
what's the
point? So we don't know, and so that leads to conspiracies, and whether it's wag the dog, which is shocking and would be horrible if it was in fact true. At least Clinton had some justification for shooting cruise missiles. He missed, but it's shooting cruise missiles at Al-Qaeda.
Too bad he missed.
It absolutely is. And so that seems to be the only rationale. But you know, George W. Bush went to war with Iraq at the urging of Dick Cheney. And supposedly it was going to be weapons of mass destruction, but in the end, there was no justification for it. There was no basis for it, except that Dick Cheney thought it would be a good idea to overthrow a murderous dictator and put our own democratic government into place, but one that was friendly with us. And of course, it all failed. Every aspect of it failed.
But just interrupt, but the one thing is that it was under the cover of 9/11, so we were ready to go for war.
No. We had our military in great strength in Afghanistan, there to capture the leader of Al-Qaeda, Osama bin Laden, and the leader of the Taliban, Sheikh Omar. And we achieved neither of those, in part because we yanked the vast bulk of our forces out of Afghanistan, where the threat was, where 9/11 came from,
Right.
and we moved them to Iraq. And the one time that Dick Cheney said publicly, well, Saddam Hussein supported the attack on 9/11. George W. Bush, give him credit, said, no, he didn't. He had nothing to do with it, had no relation.
But I guess
there was no basis for us to go to war there.
And I don't disagree with that, but I'm just saying is that because we went to in Iraq, when did we invade Iraq? 2002?
2 years later. It was 2003,
right. But so
4.
from the public's point of view, we were still, I mean, it was accepted by the public, I think, because we were still ready to go after somebody. And you're presenting a pretty sophisticated argument about moving the troops out of Afghanistan and all that. But I think that was the public cover. But the other thing was there was a real reason, because I don't disagree with it, but the neocons at the time, right?
That's right.
With Cheney wanted to change the Middle East like it was a noble experiment.
That's right.
We're going to take Hussein out, and then the middle class is going to rise, and it's going to be a democracy, and we're all going to have.
Yeah, and there were unicorns involved and rainbows, I think, were all part of that too. So it was spectacularly wrong.
Right. But
it was based on clearly false evidence. The claim that there were weapons of mass destruction, there were nuclear weapons being developed.
But it had
actively.
underpinnings of logic, is what I'm saying. The neocon logic.
And so to me, there's no more logic there than the lies in which the Venezuela attacks are occurring, which are based on stopping the drug trade that's coming from Venezuela. Yeah, there are some drugs there, so in that sense there's a basis, but they're not the drugs that are killing Americans. They're cocaine that rich people take. It's based on a lie, weapons of mass destruction, versus drugs that are killing off vast numbers of American people. Both are based on lies, and there's no basis for the attacks like the attacks that would result in us going full-fledged into war with Venezuela.
Right, and the only thing I would say to that, and we can stop after this, is that that it was based on lies in Venezuela, if it is, and in Iraq, but at least Iraq had a noble perspective.
Stopping drugs. If drugs come from Venezuela, you can claim that's noble. It makes no sense.
Okay.
But yeah, I guess that's noble.
I mean, it's hard not to be. So okay, let's and then. I mean, one of the other themes I was thinking about is that the people and it's hard not to be anti-Trump. So I don't want to just be anti-Trump, and we know that he's underwater in the polls now. But do you think people just don't pay attention to this stuff? I mean, the stuff that's. I know both parties do crazy stuff, but what's going on now, the 100 tweets that he tweets at night,
Let me
it's
ask
just
you a
off
question.
the charts.
Do the people you talk to, see, we just had Thanksgiving and we talk to people
we don't talk politics, Thanksgiving.
Well, we do. So ours gets ugly. But do you have the sense from people you talk to that people are shutting it out, that they're watching less news, that they're going online less and exploring, for exactly the reasons you talk about? We have such a surfeit of information pouring out, and anger and claims and nonsense and stupidity and tweets and lies, that there's such volume that people are saying, I just can't take this, and are reducing the amount of attention that they're paying as a result.
You think so?
I do. From people I've talked to, and that's not, there's no enormous amount of science behind that. I've seen some stuff where people claim that, but I think people are tuning stuff out to a degree they didn't a year ago, and didn't 3 or 4 months ago. I think the level of burnout from this stuff is increasing, and that the amount of tune out is increasing, and that could be a goal. If you're doing stupid stuff and you're doing stuff that's making the American public angry, then you want them to tune out, and you want them to be more disengaged.
I guess, but we know that elections are always in that 10 to 15% in the middle, and I think those people are paying. The only gauge I have in social media, we have Facebook, everybody has Facebook. I mean, everybody's commenting everywhere, but just in our little modest letters section, the thing that I've noticed is that the liberals are more motivated, and the usual participants who send letters in, the articulate conservatives that usually send letters in aren't right now. And I think that crowd, the real Trumpster crowd, is just lying low. Like they
because
can't, because it's ridiculous. I mean, some of the stuff is ridiculous. You can't defend this stuff.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's true, but I think both things are true. But it'll be interesting to see if the statistics that come out from Facebook and Instagram and TikTok and all the rest of it, if there is a greater degree of disengagement in terms of the online, at least that's the easier one to measure from political stuff. So you and I, we shouldn't talk about it as much.
Well, we're going to see what happens at next November at the elections to see how people are motivated or not.
Oh, so we're going to do our predictions?
Yeah, let's do predictions. Let's start at the national level. And, I mean, Trump, one thing, it's certainly an interesting 10 months, right? And it's 3 more years to go. It's like we've had 8 years. Looks like we've had 2 decades of Trump in his last 10.
Yeah.
And, then you got people like, just on the way in, Kash Patel, FBI director. Right. I guess he was helping his girlfriend, forced his FBI agents to drive her home because she was drunk or something, or her friend. All this stuff is coming out. What about Kash Patel? Do you think he's going to, I guess what they're saying is he's going to be out.
Well,
and then you get
Hegseth is the one most on the edge. His signal
gate,
open signal gate, call it, secure, supposedly secure information and insecure participants and methodology, as well as the double tap and his.
That's a military term, that double tap. That's a good one.
Thank you. And his changing story on it. At first he was engaged, I watched it, I did this, I did that, and then suddenly, well, I didn't really see the end and I wasn't there at the end. I think he's the one most in danger because he's dumb. He doesn't speak well. No, I think it's more than that. I think Patel is not qualified, but I don't think he's dumb. Hegseth is dumb. He just says stupid stuff and doesn't belong in the job. But I think he'll have a harder time holding up because he'll struggle to cover up stuff as effectively. Kristi Noem, for example, is a little bit smarter, and I think she'll likely survive. But I'm pretty convinced that one of the messages that Trump took home after his first term in office and after losing the election to Biden, one of the messages he took home was firing all the people, hiring and firing a lot of people who I didn't think were doing a good job, weren't adequately loyal to me, made me look bad and hurt me. And that turnover made my administration look much more chaotic. And I'm not going to do that anymore. And I'm going to try to demonstrate stability, in part by putting people in place who weren't qualified, but were utterly loyal and would do whatever he told them to do. And so I think he is much more hesitant to fire people this time around. He would have gotten rid of some of these people by now if it hadn't been his experience in the first term. I do, yeah.
But he's still, Trump is just he's more Trumpian. He's older. When you get older, your tendencies tend to exaggerate. The fact that he's the other good story yesterday was about Letitia James, the New York Attorney General. And the first indictment was a bust. Right. And the grand jury yesterday, I guess, didn't even, the old story about that, you can get a ham sandwich indicted, right? Because with a grand jury indictment, there's no defense. All it is the prosecutor, and all it is probable cause. Yeah. Like, you look like you were a bank robber, okay, we're going to go to trial.
Exactly. Yeah. So Comey there's absolutely no conviction possible there. And Letitia James, I think, is very unlikely. I don't think we have enough of the information.
He didn't even get past the grand jury.
Couldn't get past the grand jury. And then you get to Bolton. And I think Bolton's the interesting one, because Bolton probably had some secret stuff that he shouldn't have had, and there was a story about, and he wrote a book, and the book ultimately got approved, and it was published,
but it was
and
critical.
Now they're going after him because there was supposedly secret stuff in there, but it had already been approved. The trick on that one is that if Bolton is guilty, and it's a very close call there, that he could unlikely, but if he is found guilty, then Trump was clearly guilty with all the stuff that he had piled up at Mar-a-Lago. So you have no subtlety. There's no pretense. Patel and Bondi are in office to go after Trump's enemies. And I think when you point out that there's some embarrassment on the part of traditional, solid, conservative Republicans to jump in and start defending Trump at this point in time, I think that's one of the main areas, that there's no gray area here. He is simply acting in an effort to enact vengeance against people who made his life more difficult when he was out of office. And so I don't think these things do Trump any good in the long run. Maybe they provide him with some personal satisfaction, and they certainly cause these individuals who are being hounded to expend money on legal fees and so on. And I think that's part of Trump's maneuver here, is to get even with them that way, because he had to spend money to defend himself. But there's no subtlety to it at all. And I think in the end it hurts the Republican Party, it hurts them, it will hurt them in the midterm elections, and it's hurting Trump in the polls, as you said. And so, you know, sitting here in Conway, relatively safe and sound from Trump coming after me, good for him. Keep doing it, because he's just digging himself a deeper and deeper hole, going after people who clearly don't deserve it.
And like with the planning boards around here, the pendulum swings.
That's right.
You know, and I mean, hopefully the pendulum just doesn't swing all Democrat. That hopefully the pendulum swings with the traditional conservatives.
And you'll get Mondami and AOC and yeah, I mean, these are people who we don't want to vote for if we don't have to. And so people are voting for these people in part because the pendulum has swung a very far way in the other direction.
And as we know, that Trump and actually, you know, Trump and the two extremes of the party can come together on the other side of the circle. You know, I mean, Bernie Sanders and Trump, I mean, the same type of people. Some people who voted for Bernie voted for Trump.
Absolutely.
Disenfranchised people.
As hard as it is for many of us to understand that, it is very true. My 23-year-old basketball players telling me in 2016 they were going to vote in the primary, but they couldn't decide whether to vote for Republican primary for Trump or Democratic primary for Sanders. And
I mean, we had an essay from a Freiburg Academy student, very well done. You know, and his thing was they just want to change.
Yeah,
and, you know,
absolutely right.
That's a big thing. And
absolutely.
So, all right, we got 2 minutes to go, believe it or not, and we've already burned an hour, and 23 minutes too long on housing, I think. What about the governor's race? I mean, you got Ayotte is, you know, she's.
Well, it's just Ayotte will win. We always the only Craig Benson was able to lose after one term in 100 years.
And she's doing a good job.
And she's doing okay. Yeah. I mean, there are an array of things and the local control.
Because I think
she'll win.
Yeah, Portsmouth mayor, what's his name, Deglin
McEachern. So here's a comment. So New Hampshire is way too much a nepo baby state as far as who we elect. We vote for Sununus and McEacherns. We don't know him, but his father was. Yeah, absolutely. Custer and Pappas, his family in Manchester, Sununu family, obviously, the Gregg family, Hugh Gregg and then Judd Gregg. We keep voting for the kids, and there got to be better people in some of these cases. I don't understand. Democrat, Republican, doesn't matter. We vote for the nepo babies.
We do, but they have the experience and they're brought up in it. And
give me a break. They inherit these jobs.
Well,
and it really bothers me.
Kelly Ayotte.
No, I wasn't suggesting her. Okay. But you were talking about McEachern as a potential.
No, I agree with that. And they're still very capable. And the other thing is that they're, you know, I mean, I don't disagree with you, the dynasties, but the Sununus are all, I mean, they're all bright and smart. I mean, John Sununu.
Wow, what a difference between John the father, who was a very smart guy, and John E. and Chris are not in the same class as Daddy. Daddy was smart. And I've had conversations with the other two that do not measure up. But Daddy was the smartest governor we've ever had. I mean, sharpest, quickest. He was good.
Yeah. Okay. Well, okay. And then the last one with the Congress. I mean, Chris Pappas is running for the U.S. Senate. Right. So there are like a half a dozen people on each side running to fill his seat. Most of these people, if I mention them all, you wouldn't know who they are.
Absolutely right. There are only two on the Democratic side who have a chance.
Stephanie Shaheen.
Stephanie Shaheen, the Nepo baby there, and who I like very much. I met her, and her husband is just a cool guy. Somebody who will gain support. And Morris Sullivan, who's just impressive, a military veteran. She ran a few years ago and was very effective, terrific in the debate that I did, and just two impressive people. And one of those two will win it. Stephanie Shaheen, clearly with the advantage. But I think that would be an interesting race to watch. And I'd simply eliminate all the rest. Then none of the rest of them have any chance.
And on the Republican side, they're all the rest, because nobody has name recognition.
There's nobody obvious. This DiLorenzo guy who owns all the car dealerships has all the money, and so the Republicans have decided that the Republican insiders seem to be gathering up behind him, likely to back him, and we'll see where he goes. I think the more interesting race is the one between Scott Brown and John E. Sununu to run against Pappas. And I think Pappas is going to have a hard time. I don't think he's a no-brainer, and I think, you know, the control of the United States Senate may well rest with New Hampshire, and whether Democrats continue to hold that seat with Shaheen gone and Pappas trying to replace her. Scott Brown is Trump 112%.
And he's a force of nature guy.
He is. He was a U.S. Senator from Massachusetts, came up here as a carpetbagger and ran with very little time here. Now he's been around for a while and has made friends and so on. And ambassador under Trump. I mean, he is all Trump all the time. And then you have John E. Sununu, who was a senator for a term and then lost to Shaheen. And who ran against another Republican, Bob Smith, and so he made he won and defeated an incumbent Republican, and that made a lot of Republicans angry and who haven't forgotten that. He was a pretty much irrelevant senator in his 6 years on the job. I don't remember him doing much of anything. The conversations that I saw him have, he was generally uninformed. And he didn't seem to like the job. He doesn't like to shake hands with people.
No,
he doesn't like to hang out with people. And yet he's a Sununu, and Chris remains popular. And it'll be interesting to see whether his name will carry him over Scott Brown. The Pappas campaign is desperately hoping that Scott Brown wins, because Pappas has a good shot at defeating Scott Brown and running against Trump, essentially, and he'll have a much harder time defeating Sununu.
Yeah, I think the Trump coattails it's gonna be tough for Scott Brown, for anybody at this point. I mean, who knows? 6 months is a week.
Sununu's created a little bit of distance, and so he has the better shot in the general election.
And he's a traditional conservative. You know, and I always liked John. I liked him, and he was a good congressman. When he was the congressman, he was always around. But you're right about his people skills, and I think he's really developed those. You know, everybody's a natural at something. And Bart Barkman, who was our editor forever, so we had this inside joke, because John Sununu would come in, and for whatever reason, he would just go around Bart. Like Bart was an unassuming guy. So he always said, "Oh, you got Sununu'd. You got ignored." Anyway, George, season's greetings.
Okay. Season's greetings to you. Have a great holiday.
See you, everyone.
Thank you all.